The DC Blockchain Summit is about to go live, and we are going to watch it here together with the Longview crew. So if you guys are coming into the stream, be sure to engage in the chat. Hit the like button. We're going to watch this live together. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I'll share the chat with everyone so we can all enjoy it together. And again, if it's your first time to the stream, we cover all things crypto news, and all things in the overall market because it all affects crypto, right? So as you can see, let me get to the correct screen so we can watch this together. And we're still waiting right now, so I'll turn the volume down a little bit. Hopefully we get some people coming into the stream here shortly. This should be starting in just a few minutes as we're waiting for it to begin. This is not the Clarity Act, okay? This is just a discussion with people in DC about the future of blockchain in 2026, and we have multiple sponsors that will be there and will be available. So should get a lot of really good information from this stream, or at least from this blockchain summit. Let me see here. There we go. We don't need to see the other chat there. We have our own chat that we can enjoy. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully some people are hopping into the stream. Let me get the chat moved over here so it doesn't mess with it. There we go. Boom. And I'm sure some of the regulars will be popping in here in just a minute. As soon as this thing gets rolling, I normally don't stream at this time. I'll still be doing my normal noon stream today for anyone who may be in here already. I'll still be doing my normal noon stream today. I have a special one for you guys, and don't worry, it's not the XRP versus CC. It's something a lot more important, I believe. So hopefully we get some more people in here shortly and we can discuss while we're waiting for this to start. Chat, guys, engage in the chat. This is a community. This is not just me talking today. We're going to be watching this together as soon as it starts. Should be starting in a couple minutes. But this is going to be the summit, the DC Blockchain Summit, discussing the future of crypto. Should get a lot of good information here. Anyone in the chat yet? Anyone signing off? Let's see. Stephen Haynes made it in the house today. God of Thunder. I see Broadridge there. That's right. Exactly. This is gonna be great because this is gonna be just a good conversation about how blockchain is developing, not necessarily what's going on with the Clarity Act or Clarity. This will just get a good feeling about the thoughts around crypto. And this is perfect because it ties in perfectly to the stream I had planned at noon today as far as what we will be discussing. I got a good one. I've literally spent the last 2 days preparing this stream that I'm going to be doing today. I'm really excited about it. It's got a lot of good info in it. Not for this particular stream. Well, this particular stream has a lot of good info too, but this isn't the one I'm talking about. Today is going to be a big day for me, ladies and gentlemen, so I hope you guys got some time. If not, you can always catch the replays whenever you get a spare chance, but I'm really excited about the stream I have for you guys today at noon, as well as this one, to be honest with you. Hopefully this starts here in just a second. And again, so you guys know, this is a hangout. We're gonna watch it together. I'm eyeballing the chat just as much as I'm eyeballing what's going on here. So put your thoughts, ideas, whatever you guys think about what you're watching. This is a community show today. We're watching this together. I'm getting the information at the same time you guys are. Daniel Hool in the house today. AC made it. Glad he caught it today. He's all ears. No future without clarity. Agreed. We do need the market structure bill passed, but this is not what this is. This is not the Clarity Act. We still need the Clarity Act to go through. We need things codified in the law. Everyone should know my stance on the Clarity Act by this point. Jack McDonald will be there for RLUSD. And again, this is not the Clarity Act, but hit the like button to grow the stream. You guys are already engaging in the chat. I never had a doubt that you guys would do that. I love this community. You guys are so awesome. You guys constantly talking. I love it. We are here for the long view together. Unicoin. Platinum sponsor, aligned with BlackRock. Tron, diamond sponsor. Interesting. Tron's been making a really big push lately. I'm going to have to do some more research on Tron. Gold sponsorships and silver sponsorship so we can see everyone here. This is a who's who of people who have arrived, with Tron and basically Uniswap or BlackRock being major contributors. Remember, Uniswap partnered with BlackRock. Looking at these names here, you can start to get an idea of what we're looking at moving forward. Man, I wish this thing would start already. It said it was starting at 9:30, and I rushed to get everything going, and that was 22 minutes ago. Hurry up and wait. Typical. It's typical, I swear. You guys, who's in here? How many people we got in here? I'll give you a sneak peek of what I got coming up earlier. I'll give you a hint. Let me see how many people we got in here, though. All right, we got 13 in here already. I'm guessing that's most of the people who got notifications and stuff like that. So keep the chat rolling. We're going to keep this thing rolling as soon as it starts. But in the meantime, sneak peek as far as what I have coming up for you all later today when I do my normal noon stream once this is over. Here you go. Give you kind of an idea of what may be to come. I got the wrong stuff in there. I need to fix this. No, I don't. The right phases are in there. Idea of things to come, right? Hopefully this thing starts, though. Otherwise, talk to me, guys. Otherwise, I'm just filling time waiting for it to start. And I hate doing that. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. It is St. Patty's Day. I got my green on. I got permanent green on. I am Irish, but I also have my Irish tattoo as well. But yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Drink your green beer, smoke your greenery, whatever you're going to do. Enjoy the day. Be safe. It's a little early for St. Patty's Day drinks, at least in my neck of the woods. Let's see. Let me pull the chat up while we're waiting for this. Hopefully you guys are still talking. Kelly made it in the house today. They said it was going to be starting up here soon. Just had an ad pop up. Ah, okay. I must have forgot to hit the right button. Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Let me see if I can adjust the ads. I usually try to turn them off so they don't come up midstream. Hey, Steven, when you got the ad, was it like a split screen ad or did it cut you off? Because I was told too that they're starting to force more of the split screen ads. So if you guys received an ad, did it cut you off or was it like a quick split screen ad? Let me know, because that may be something I can't control. I got a pop-up a couple times recently when I finished my streams because it specifically asked me why I don't select to have the ads run while I'm streaming. So I wonder if it's trying to force something on me. I hope not. So if you guys are getting ads, I'm sorry. It cut you off. All right. If you guys are getting ads, I'm sorry. I'm trying to switch it now. Joe got a split screen ad. Okay. So let me see. Maybe I messed up the ads today. I wonder if I can change that midstream. Otherwise, it's just going to keep kicking the viewers out while we're doing this, and that defeats the purpose. Manage. Let me see if I can edit this while we're waiting for it to start. I appreciate you guys letting me know. Analytics, viewer activity, stream health, shopping. Let me see. Will it allow me to stream settings? Ads. It won't let me switch it. What the heck? It looks like it's not going to let me turn it off midstream. Oh, wait, here it goes. Edit, monetization. Monetization. Yes. Okay, mode, manual mode. There we go. Now no one should get ads. I fixed it. Okay. Now no one should get ads midstream. That's weird. I hate when they do that crap. Now they're trying to force the ads on me. I could have sworn I selected no. I normally always do. And of course, we hurry up and wait. Vince Brown in the house today. That's a new name. I don't recognize that one. Thank you, Vince. They said this was supposed to start at 9:30. And here we are waiting at almost 10 o'clock Central Time. So, because they said it was supposed to start at 10:30 Eastern. We'll see what happens. What are we looking at here? Well, while this is waiting, we can do some other things. Keep the chat rolling. We'll have a discussion in the meantime while we wait for it to get going. Thoughts on Quant? It's over. Ledger will connect it all. Only 14 million tokens. Okay. Well, I've done some research on Quant, but here's the question I ask anyone when it comes to Quant, because I do a full thing. And when it comes to my crypto investing, my personal beliefs, I try to keep it to a handful, 3, 4, 5 projects tops that I'm investing in every single week. Because if I can't, for me, the way I view it, if I can't narrow it down to just a few projects, then am I investing in the right projects, right? Am I really into the right projects as far as my belief that I can invest in every single month? Because my personal view of blockchain is to invest over the long view, right? 10% of my income over the next 10 years. That's why when people ask me about price or how much of a certain token they should hold, I always refer to the process. Here we go.
Everybody, you guys hear me okay? Yeah, awesome. Glad to see everybody made it and that none of you were taken out by an actual tornado or had any of your cars destroyed by hail.
Her mic sounds like mine yesterday.
So today is actually a very special week for me too. Well, obviously it's day one of DC Blockchain Summit, but it's the first week that it is DC Blockchain Week as well. And thank you to the Digital Chamber for having me back as MC this year. It's a special week because it is also the 1-year anniversary of Crypto in America. And that is the podcast and newsletter that I write and co-host. So very exciting. And we've had the privilege of having a lot of you guys on the podcast, and we look forward to having more of you on this year. So very exciting for us too. But we've got a great lineup for you guys today. The Digital Chamber has an all-star lineup of speakers over the next 2 days, 38 members of Congress, agency heads, state and federal policymakers, and founders and leaders from across the crypto and TradFi industries. So without further ado, I want to kick things off by bringing up the person responsible for putting this whole thing together. You know him, you love him, the Digital Chamber CEO, Cody Carbone.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's see what they have for us today.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. The 9th annual DC Blockchain Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited that it's finally here, that you braved the storms, as Ellie just said, you braved the tornadoes that came through, but I'm glad that it's here. And it's a great momentous occasion, DC Blockchain Week. It's incredible to hear how many members of Congress, state leaders, regulatory heads are joining us today. It just shows how far we've come. And so I'm very grateful that you all decided to come and join us today. And I know our team is grateful. So thank you, truly. Each day I have people ask me, has the Digital Chamber been successful? Are we where we want to be in terms of creating the policy rules of the road that will drive this industry? For the first time in a long time, that question doesn't feel hypothetical. It feels real. From the signing of the Genius Act, to the launch of the SEC's Project Crypto, to the formation of the White House Crypto Council, from prudential regulatory clarity to real conversations about market structure, from regulators who once dismissed this industry to those now sitting down with us today in the audience as partners. On the outside, that looks like a whole lot of success. And it is. Unequivocally, the Digital Chamber has been successful. But success in Washington is fragile, often fleeting. And it is easy, dangerously easy, to become comfortable when momentum is on your side. If you take anything from what I say today, it's this. We, as an industry, as advocates, cannot get comfortable. Not because things are bad, but because they're finally good. I was reminded recently just how far we've come. Almost to the date, I started at the Digital Chamber 4 years ago. My first meeting was with the United States Senator. I was pumped up. I had a new suit. I was going to go in and make the case for crypto. About 5 minutes into the conversation, the senator stopped me. He said, "Show me a Bitcoin." All nervous. I said, "Okay." I pull out my phone. I'm going to show him my wallet. He said, "No, no, no, no. Show me a physical Bitcoin." Then he pulled out a dollar bill, and I remember this very vividly. He said, "Until you can do this, this means nothing to me." That was my light bulb moment, where I realized our education journey was just beginning. The moment showed me why education is the foundation to advocacy, why education evolves into advocacy. Fast forward to today, 4 years later. We're no longer being asked to show what a physical Bitcoin is. We're debating market structure, stablecoin frameworks, DeFi protections, AI integration, custody models, prudential supervision, and US leadership on crypto, with the same type of offices that once asked to see a physical Bitcoin. That's progress, baby. But progress is not permanence. There are no moral victories in regulatory circles, no moral victories in Washington, no partial credit points for almost passing market structure legislation, no consolation prizes for good engagement. The difference between passing durable legislation and failing to do so is not theoretical. It is the difference between whether this industry cements itself in America or slowly migrates elsewhere. It's the difference between your job being in the United States or elsewhere. Policy is not permanent unless we make it permanent. It's why we cannot get comfortable. This is not meant to be all doom and gloom. The world is just changing faster than the policy frameworks around it. The digital world is changing. The financial system is changing. The way information moves is changing. Every day, we see the intersection of digital and analog. Look around you today. No echo chamber here. Banks are in this room, asset managers are in this room, developers in this room, lawmakers and regulators are in this room. The worlds are merging, not to preserve the old system, but to improve it. Tokenized treasuries, on-chain settlement, real-time collateral, transparent reserves, self-custody. This isn't just niche innovation, it's infrastructure. And infrastructure shapes the future quietly and permanently. That's why the digital chamber exists, and that's why we're expanding. Innovation is accelerating, and our job is to make sure the rules keep up. We're advocates for responsible disruption. Disruption with policies that actually fit how this technology works as adoption scales. Last year, we went global. In December, we proudly acquired Crypto UK, the largest digital asset trade association in the United Kingdom. Not just to strengthen our organization, but to align policy and coordinate advocacy across the Atlantic. The digital chamber is no longer just advocating in Washington, we're advocating in the halls of Westminster as well. And today, we're taking the next step. We're proud to announce that the digital chamber is expanding our advocacy and education efforts into Asia through a new partnership with the Asian Web3 Alliance of Japan. This is about something bigger than expanding our footprint. It's about ensuring that the policies that we fight for here in the United States don't stop at our borders. Because digital asset policy is no longer a domestic conversation. It's global. Innovation moves across borders. Capital moves across borders. And if we want the United States to lead, we have to show up in the conversations everywhere that they're happening. Our roots are here in Washington, but the rules shaping this industry are increasingly written everywhere. We've also expanded our focus because innovation itself is expanding. Blockchain doesn't exist in isolation anymore. It's colliding with AI and the development of quantum computing. We recently launched the AI and Quantum Working Group at the Digital Chamber. AI is already reshaping compliance, supervision, and financial risk. And while quantum computing may still feel very far away, the cryptographic implications are very real. That same mindset applies to how we approach innovation more broadly. At the Digital Chamber, we believe our role isn't just to support new technologies, it's to help ensure they develop responsibly, with clear principles that allow innovation to move forward while maintaining trust. That's exactly why we launched our Prediction Markets Working Group earlier this year. Prediction markets are one of the most powerful tools we have for aggregating information, understanding risk, and improving decision-making. But like every emerging technology, they need thoughtful guardrails to guide how they develop. Today, we'll be releasing the Digital Chamber's prediction market principles to help frame that conversation. Because innovation moves fast, and policy needs to keep up. We're also seeing something else happen. The lines between traditional finance and crypto are disappearing. For years, the narrative was that these two systems were competing, but that's not what's happened. They're converging. Banks are paying attention to crypto. Crypto companies are building financial infrastructure, and policymakers are realizing that these two systems will have to operate together, which means there needs to be a place where these two worlds meet, where TradFi, CeFi, DeFi can actually sit down and build the future of finance together. That's a role we're proud to play. The Digital Chamber will be that home, the convener, the place where those conversations happen. You'll see that come to life later in the program, where we share more about our new partnership with Money 2020, the largest convening authority of fintech leaders in the world. We're proud to partner with them and help bring the full financial ecosystem together. Because if we're serious about modernizing financial infrastructure, those conversations can't happen in silos. But do not mistake our ambition for complacency on crypto policy here in DC. We're just getting started. We still need market structure legislation. We need DeFi protections. We must preserve privacy. We need to protect stablecoin rewards. We must protect self-custody, protect the growth of Bitcoin mining in the United States, and we must lean into AI and quantum proactively. The conversation has evolved. It's no longer about asking regulators for clarity. It's about helping define it. And we're at the table. And none of this happens without our members. Our members are not logos on a website. They're founders navigating uncertainty, institutions testing new rails, and developers building open systems. When I walk into any meeting in DC, I carry that responsibility with me. And none of this happens without our team. We doubled in size in a year from 15 to 30 folks at the Digital Chamber. Not for optics, but because the work demanded it. It's long nights, early mornings, cross-time zone coordination, constant preparation. It is not a 9 to 5. And they show up every single day. And I could not be prouder to work with every one of them. So when people ask me what success looks like, here's my answer. Success looks like durable law. It looks like bipartisan foundations that outlast election cycles or administrations. It looks like developers building without fear, institutions participating with clarity. It looks like America leading, unequivocally leading, thoughtfully, instead of reacting late. And it looks like a community that remembers what it felt like when a senator asked to see a physical Bitcoin. Because we should remain humble and we cannot get comfortable. Our humility will keep us disciplined, and the next 3 years will shape the next 30. Technology will not slow down, and capital will not wait. So we'll keep going. We will build, we will educate, we will advocate, and we will expand. That's what success looks like. That is what the United States of America, being the crypto capital of the world, looks like. Thank you very much.
Some big buzzwords there, mainly talking about integration, adoption, acceleration.
And I'm thrilled to kick off the exciting 2 days with you. We have a quick video to welcome everyone to the DC Blockchain Summit from Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, and then we'll get into our program. Thanks all.
Next 3 years are going to be crazy, ladies and gentlemen. I tend to believe that.
Thank you to the Digital Chamber for convening the DC Blockchain Summit to explore how emerging technology and industry and public policy all intersect. So here in Maryland, we're building an innovative state government that leverages technology to improve citizens' lives. You can see this in our push for our new Maryland.gov website, which makes state services more accessible, as well as our Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund, which partners with fintech to bring affordable financial tools to underbanked communities. Emerging technologies, like blockchain, are starting to play a vital role in verifying data and enhancing information sharing. And we must ensure that these innovations leave no one behind. So my challenge to you is simple. Don't just build for the market. Build for the public good. Let's create a digital economy that works for everyone. Thanks.
That'd be lovely, but I don't think the banks are going to do that. I've been of the vein that when it comes to Clarity Act, the banks are going to get everything they want. I mean, golden rule, right?
The intersection of crypto and banking has been a hot topic this year, as we all know. To kick us off on stage today, we have a conversation on trust charters, stablecoins, and the future of the federal banking system. Please welcome Comptroller of the Currency, Jonathan Gould, in conversation with the Digital Chamber's Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs, Zunaira Mazar.
Is it me or does it bother anyone else that she's sitting there? I know she's reading notes off of her phone, but does it bother anyone else that she's got her phone at the podium? Maybe it's just an old school version of me. I don't like that.
The U.S. has long led the world in building the most trusted and dynamic financial system. Today, digital assets, stablecoins, and tokenized infrastructure are reshaping how value moves through the global economy. And once again, the United States has been at the forefront of this transformation. Across the industry, from stablecoin issuers and digital asset firms, the companies are exploring federal charters. The focus is increasingly on how these innovations integrate into a trusted and well-regulated financial system. That makes the role of regulators especially important as this next generation of financial infrastructure takes shape. Comptroller Gould, thank you so much for being here today. You've stepped into this role last July after previously serving at the OCC, working on the Senate Banking Committee, and advising financial institutions in the private sector. From that vantage point, since taking office, what have been your top priorities and what progress has the OCC made under your leadership so far?
Thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting me to appear before you today. It's great to be here. So some of the things that I'm focused on include basically restoring banks to their proper role as financial intermediaries, embracing innovation, and strengthening bank supervision. So in terms of restoring banks to their proper role as financial intermediaries, a lot of the changes I think that we made post-2008 financial crisis, in particular, kind of following 2010 Dodd-Frank Act and the discretionary regulatory and supervisory changes that we made, really did tend to marginalize some of bank activities, such that we found increasingly that banks were serving less of their historic role as financial intermediators. This is not to say that banks are the only financial intermediaries that we have. We have a number of other players, non-bank players too, but banks have historically played a very important role. And so, restoring them to that role through changes in capital, liquidity, et cetera, has been really important and a top priority. On the embracing innovation side, one of the top level kind of messages that I would like the people in this room to have and to hear from me today is that, look, it's not our business as a regulator to tell individual banks or entities that we supervise what they should or should not be doing in terms of embracing a new technology or engaging in a legally permissible activity. But what I think it is our role is that, look, if supervised institutions want to embrace new technologies or engage in legally permissible activities, it is our role as a supervisor to partner with them to ensure that they can do it in a safe and sound manner. That is to say, we're not going to continue to, as we have perhaps at times in the past, solely place the burden on the regulated institution to figure out a way to do an otherwise legally permissible activity or legally permissible technology to do that in a safe and sound manner. We're going to undertake that journey with them together. So that's, I think, a pretty significant change in philosophical attitude that's been occurring over the last year and what will continue to occur. And
so they're going to help
strengthening
banks
supervision. A lot of
incorporate
times,
blockchain.
We have failed to hardwire into regulation some of our supervisory objectives, and so we're doing that. We're trying to establish kind of greater certainty around what we expect from supervised institutions. We're also trying to make our supervision more effective by refocusing on material financial risk. I think you're seeing that across the board from a number of bank regulators, not just the OCC, but also the FDIC and the Federal Reserve.
Great, thank you. So the Genius Act. The Genius Act is priority for many in our audience. As the OCC advances its rulemaking, how is the agency thinking about payment stablecoin, digital asset activities, and the most important, I think, to this room, stablecoin yield conversation? What should the industry expect?
So we are obviously very excited to have gotten our Genius Act NPR out for public comment. This is something that the team at the OCC was working on actually even before the president signed the bill into law. back in July. Actually, one of the first events that I was able to go to as the recently confirmed comptroller was to attend the signing statement for the Genius Act, which was a lot of fun. And obviously a lot of people in this room put in a lot of effort to make that day a reality. So we started pretty much right off the bat working on the Genius Act NPR. I will say that we have put out what we think is an intellectually defensible proposal. I want to emphasize that it is just a proposal. We ask, I think somebody counted it and told me, I think there are 211 questions in there. We ask a lot of questions. We do so because we want to build as robust an administrative record as possible, because we want to, again, provoke a response from you and other concerned stakeholders around, and to get as much substantive feedback on the proposal as we can so that we can improve it. So that's probably my most important message to give you on the NPR that we issued, is that, look, it's a proposal. I think it's an intellectually defensible proposal, but it is just a proposal, and we do actually welcome and need your feedback across the board on issues ranging from the mundane to the most controversial. We really do welcome your feedback, whether formally or informally, and I have been personally getting on the phone, reaching out to folks, encouraging people to please weigh in and give us substantive feedback from kind of all sides, all corners who have an interest in this. But we are very intent on kind of moving quickly to get it finalized. You'll note that we placed, I think, particular emphasis on things like reserve asset requirements, diversification, liquidity. We recognize that payment stablecoin issuers are not necessarily and shouldn't always be treated as banks. That being said, because we regulate a number of entities, including bank entities engaged in payment stablecoin activity, we want to ensure that the supervisory approach to the activity is going to be treated similarly regardless of who's doing it. So we think that we have that ability. We think Congress has given us that flexibility to do that. And so we are intent on, again, hopefully getting as much robust, substantive feedback from you all and others as possible, and then moving to finalize as quickly as we can. I would note that although the NPR is voluminous in page count, it is not everything. There are very important components left out of it, including on the BSA AML side, which is obviously of very high public policy value and hopefully of high interest to many of the folks in this room. And so we will be releasing a separate NPR in conjunction with Maine Treasury on that aspect.
So, the industry is already looking for extension, and are we hearing that there's another one coming out?
Well, I mean, we're busy. One of the things I learned from my last time in the administration is that you got to make every day count. So we are working very hard to get not just in the digital asset space, but any number of other regulations out too. So yes, I think it's fair to say there are always more NPRs coming out from the OCC, at least in the near term. Sometimes working in isolation or sometimes with our interagency partners.
Great, thank you. So we're seeing growing interest from fintech and digital asset firms exploring federal bank charters. As comptroller, you've emphasized the need for a dynamic and competitive banking system. What steps is the agency taking to promote federal charters and support innovation while ensuring safety and soundness?
Well, thank you for the question. Let me just say, first of all, we don't promote federal charters. I care deeply about the vitality and vibrancy of the state banking system. I think, candidly, the last 4 years show you why having a vibrant and vital state banking system is very important, particularly when the federal banking system is, for whatever reason, seemingly kind of shut down or hostile towards innovation and change or new bank formation. I would also note, just institutionally, I'm also on the FDIC board of directors. And so, as you probably know, or many of you know in this room, the FDIC plays a vital role in terms of reviewing and approving or rejecting deposit insurance applications for new banks in this country. And so, again, I care deeply about what's going on over there and making sure that we have a welcoming environment for new banks, whether they be federally chartered or state chartered. I think it's very important to preserve that dynamic. It's worked out well for both state chartering authorities as well as federal chartering authorities. It's a constructive attention that's very valuable to, I think, both sides of the equation here. And I would note that the OCC, under my leadership, will continue to defend, for example, state banks' rights to preemption, et cetera, because, again,
we practice what we preach. We believe that the state banking system is in fact important to the overall health of the U.S. banking system. On the OCC specific side of the ledger, de novo chartering has just flatlined in America over the last 16, 18 years. Before 2008, we were getting just the OCC. So for a moment, setting aside the 50 plus states out there and all the great chartering work that they were doing, but just the OCC alone was getting something on the order of 100 applicants per year for new banks every year before 2008 on average. In the 16 years or so that followed, so from 2010, let's just say, to 2024, we got fewer than 4 every year. I mean, that's embarrassing. That is not the sign of a healthy and vibrant banking system. And I can tell you, it is not solely a function of, well, demand just fell off a cliff, right? That was regulators basically discouraging banks or discouraging applicants from submitting new bank applications in America. That meant that the banking system was losing a very important input that causes it to change over time, to evolve, to better meet the needs of customers and the markets and communities it serves. And so what are we doing at the OCC in response to that? So we are essentially just doing what we've always said we have done, which is follow our established procedures, which are written in our comptroller's licensing manual and that have been on display for the world to see for years and years and years. So we are essentially reverting to ordinary business, following the procedures that we've outlined in the past, and actually acting on the statutory factors that Congress has given us in following our own procedures, including, for example, rendering kind of an initial decision on a new bank formation request within 120 days. That is what we have said we'll always do. We've just have failed to observe our own policies in the past. And so, I can't sit here and tell you what the exact level of demand is or how many new banks should be formed in this country, but it's not zero. And we're really excited to see the interest in banks, whether it's national trust banks, whether it's state banks, across the board. And I'm working both as comptroller and as an FDIC board member to ensure they get a fair hearing before the applicable regulatory agency, and that the statutory factors that Congress has set are being applied in even-handed fashion, regardless of who the applicant is.
Real quick, I have to say, because this is of note. So under the previous OCC leadership, they had 0 new banks. 0 new banks. Regulation by enforcement, and they wonder why people wonder if the banks are in the pockets of the Democrats, right?
On a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Comptroller. So you might not promote charters, but what you're saying is that agency is doing its job. It's making sure that innovation thrives.
And new bank formation is not something to be feared on a knee-jerk basis. New bank formation is something that has historically happened in this country, and all things being equal, it is a good. It is something we should desire to see and not artificially or extra legally prevent.
Right.
Thank you for that.
We shouldn't legally prevent competition for banks.
I had the
What a
pleasure of
thought.
working at FDIC for a very long time, so it's great to hear. Many of the issues that you talked about require coordination across regulators, particularly with Treasury, Federal Reserve, and the FDIC. How is the OCC partnering with other regulators and policymakers, including engagement with Treasury leadership and other FIREA agencies?
Well, so the OCC is actually a bureau of Treasury. We date back to 1863 when then President Abraham Lincoln and then Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase created us. They're out there, dealing with one of the country's most challenging times and fighting a war on multiple battlefields. But those two had the presence of vision to foresee the need to create and to facilitate the creation of an economic union, not just a political union.
And they were assassinated.
For this country's benefit. And the OCC was born of that collaboration between Secretary Chase and President Lincoln, and we still fulfill that role. So we have a unique and historical relationship with Maine Treasury. We are their eyes and ears into the U.S. banking system. I personally think that each of the federal banking agencies brings a unique perspective driven by their unique statutory missions. The FDIC obviously is the sole resolution authority in this country, is a deposit insurer. The Fed the Fed has a number of functions, including monetary policy, but the OCC is the sole federal chartering authority and is singularly focused on the supervision of banks. So we each bring a unique perspective, and I think our relationship with Maine Treasury is really helpful in ensuring that U.S. banking policy is optimal, and again, getting the benefit of that unique kind of OCC perspective on the federal banking system. I would also notice, again, as I noted earlier, institutionally, I sit on the FDIC board, so that makes me unique among federal banking agency principals, and that I have both an agency that I'm responsible for running, as well as an agency that on whose board I sit. So that gives me, again, I think a broader perspective. Many of us who are now back in the administration working across the federal banking agencies had the pleasure of working with one another in the first Trump administration. So I think we all have a great kind of personal and professional relationship that comes in handy across any number of issue areas. I think, although each of us, based on the agencies that we lead, has its own kind of structural and idiosyncratic circumstances. So, anything ranging from, I work at a single principal agency, which frankly makes it sometimes easier to move forward on things, versus if you work on an agency that has a board where you have to get a majority vote, that can pose its own challenges. But notwithstanding this kind of unique structural considerations, I think across all of the three federal banking agencies, and even at Maine Treasury too, I think there is a common vision that we all share in terms of, again, going back to some of the things I mentioned at the outset of our conversation, embracing innovation, kind of restoring banks their proper role as financial intermediaries, strengthening bank supervision. Again, you'll kind of see us either working jointly or on a case-by-case basis. The way I see it is that none of us federal banking agencies has a monopoly on common sense. We can all kind of cross-pollinate and work together on ideas so that we learn from the Federal Reserve, we learn from the FDIC, we make improvements accordingly. Hopefully they look at some of the things we're doing and they say, oh, that's a great idea, we want to embark on that too. So it's kind of a whole, so the nature of our interaction kind of runs the gamut from, in its most kind of obvious form, working on a rule in joint fashion, and we have a number of those. You'll see from us in a couple of days from now, proposals to change our regulatory capital framework that has, again, constrained banks from being banks for way too long now. So very excited about that. To, again, kind of on the less...
Hold up. Proposes to change our regulatory capital requirement framework? What the heck does that mean? That is not nothing.
Formal side, just, again, exchanging good ideas. A lot of us are making reforms to how we provide supervisory criticism to the banks that we're charged with. And so there's a lot of informal sharing of how we're communicating that to our supervision teams and kind of problems we're seeing in the field, or challenges or opportunities. So again, it ranges from really the formal to the informal, but there's a lot of communication that goes on behind the scene on pretty continual basis across all of us. And we also have the pleasure, as well as working with some of the great market regulators from whom I think you might be hearing from later today as well. So we look for opportunities to work with them on, again, innovation or just other areas of common interest. An example, I think, of one thing I'm particularly proud of, on that formal to informal spectrum. On the more formal side, you'll see we issued FAQs, frequently asked questions on tokenized securities that came out from all three federal banking agencies, I think, just in the last couple of weeks. So again, there's a lot going on there. We worked with the FDIC on reputation risk, have a proposal out that will, in the not too distant future be finalizing, which I think, is probably something that has been used in the past in ways that were not helpful to some of our more innovative and novel industries, including, I think, the ones that are represented in this room. So again, we're working across a lot of mechanisms to make sure we're kind of delivering optimal results on policy.
That's great to hear. I think I can speak for everybody in this room that we all appreciate the close coordination of all of the agencies. One final question for you. As you think about the future of banking innovation, what gives you the most optimism, either from your own experience or from what you're seeing across the system?
Well, maybe two things come to mind. One is that the status quo is not inevitable. We can and should do better. whether as supervisors, Americans should expect more from us in terms of how we perform and the level at which we perform, or the institutions we supervise, they also have room to improve. Whether it's embracing innovation in this area or that area, serving their customers, markets, and communities better. I think that's really important to recognize that the status quo is not inevitable. It doesn't have to be this way. We can actually improve. And along those lines, the other thing I would just note is that individuals actually make a difference. It has always been my view and my personal experience in the several times I've worked in the US government, whether on the legislative side or on the executive side, that individuals who are willing and able do make a difference. Yes, it can be sometimes challenging, but if you get up every day and you care deeply about what you're working on and you're willing to really push hard and you are able to assemble a great team, it can make a huge difference in the course of US public policy, and it can be a lot of fun at the same time as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Individuals can make a huge difference if you can assemble a good team. Okay. Whatever you say, buddy. But we did have some interesting comments there. I'm really concerned about the changes in capital requirement that they were discussing. I'm not sure what they mean by that.
It used to be that you didn't hear much from the CFTC when it came to crypto. It was mainly the SEC, and it was rarely ever good news. But since last year, that's shifted. The CFTC is now playing a much bigger role in shaping crypto regulation and is poised to take a leading role in overseeing spot market trading. Our next panel digs into what market structure actually means from the CFTC's perspective, moderated by Binance US Director and Senior Advisor Norman Reed, in conversation with MoonPay's Chief Legal Officer and Chief Administrative Officer, Caroline Pham, and former CFTC Chairman, Chris Giancarlo.
Thank you very much.
I just skipped back ahead since I paused it for a second. Now, Eric.
Some phrases, maybe provide a prompt or two, and let our panelists speak to these particular issues. So the first thing I'll do, there's some kind of breaking regulatory news, I understand, in the DeFi space. We were talking a little bit about it just a few minutes ago. So in the DeFi space, there's been a recent no action letter from our friends at the CFTC. And Caroline, could you speak to that, please?
Sure. So hot off the presses, the CFTC has just released a no action letter to Phantom Wallet. And this is really interesting because it's in the context of prediction markets and increasing access through technology service providers. So Phantom Wallet, which is a non-custodial wallet provider, and I'm proud to say is powered by MoonPay, now has a no action letter that enables it to provide its users with the ability to transmit orders on prediction markets. So those are registered DCMs with the CFTC. There's a number of conditions that apply. So some of the most important conditions that apply is that the user needs to either be a direct participant of the DCM or a customer of a CFTC registered FCM or introducing broker. And then there's requirements around disclosures and risk disclosures, communications. They can't provide any advertising or promotions that would make them need to register with the National Futures Association. But this is, I think, a really huge signal from the CFTC about Chairman Selig's commitment to being pro-innovation, to increasing access to markets, and I think, very much showing that prediction markets, which are just pure signal, they transmit intelligence, they transmit sentiment. I think we're really seeing that this is indeed like a golden age for markets that we're looking at.
That's excellent. So do you want to speak to that, Chris? Or?
Well, it's remarkable. I feel like we're still in the Pham administration. The rate at which releases and actions are being taken by the CFTC under Chairman Selig. So it's a really important development.
Yeah, I agree. It's a big improvement from where we've been, and I'm grateful for it. So the other issue which I'd like to talk about, my second issue, as I say, we only have a few minutes, is kind of, what's the difference between the digital dollar, the central bank digital currency, stable coins? How does that mix? How do they work together? Do you see a world in which I'd like your view. I know you've thought a lot about this.
Yeah. So there's both sharp distinctions, and then there's some areas where, in fact, it's a false choice. So where there's distinctions is a central bank digital currency is a sovereign obligation of the sovereign, as opposed to a stable coin, which is an obligation of a corporate provider. So in the hierarchy of value, a sovereign instrument is always, certainly in a crisis, is where the world goes, right? The reason you go to an ATM in a crisis is to actually convert your bank obligation into an obligation of Uncle Sam. You consider it taking possession of your money, but what you're really doing is saying, I no longer trust this banking institution. I want Uncle Sam behind my money. Give me cash, right? And in the hierarchy of money, a central bank instrument is better. Now, from an innovation point of view, I think the United States is absolutely right. We need to lead the digitization of the dollar through the private sector. Only the private sector can do the kind of innovation that's going to garner public support for digital money. Now, when it comes to the issue of privacy, many people say, well, CBDC bad for privacy, stablecoin good for privacy. But sadly, that's a false choice because there's no privacy protections in the Genius Act, sadly. In fact, a stablecoin you'll have no privacy in a stablecoin, either from corporates or from the government, because it's all subject to the Bank Secrecy Act. And the dirty little secrecy is the Bank Secrecy Act is not about secrecy, it's about surveillance. Right. And so the missed opportunity, and I'm a big supporter of the Genius Act, big supporter of the leaders that brought it. Bill Hagerty, I think, is remarkable for having gotten this done so early in this administration. But the missed opportunity is we didn't take the opportunity to reconsider the Bank Secrecy Act for a new digital era. As a fan of digital network technology who's been at this now for 10 years, we really need to find a moment where we need to say, what's the rebalancing of privacy and law enforcement in a digital era? You know, civilized society has been trying to get the balance right between law enforcement and privacy going back to Magna Carta. And we've always come up with a concept that says you're entitled to privacy behind your front door and in your private things unless there's probable cause of law breaking, in which case we've accepted the notion that the government has the right to break down your door if they've got probable cause. And that's the balance. Unfortunately, since the Bank Secrecy Act has been in effect, there's no longer a presumption of innocence. The government surveils our financial transactions in case we do something wrong, not because they have reason to believe we do something wrong.
Already
and so the
exists.
missed opportunity as we think about taking the dollar from its analog state to a digital network state is we're not rebalancing. We're actually just reapplying Bank Secrecy Act on top of a digital dollar. And that's the missed opportunity.
It makes sense to me. We're kind of stuck in the past then, right? The past controls the present.
Since 9/11, we've gone in the wrong direction when it comes to financial privacy, and we need to regain that balance.
Carolyn, would you like to speak to this as well? It's an interesting topic.
Look, I
Financial
think
privacy.
What's so important about
Interesting
what we're
thought.
seeing with blockchain technology is that now everything can be smart. We have smart homes, we have smart watches. Why don't we have smart money? And that is really what blockchain technology is enabling, is the ability to have smart programmable money. And so whether that is a stable coin or a tokenized deposit, these are the things that allow us to have more control, cheaper, faster, better over our money. And it's really going to help to really bring financial inclusion to everywhere in the world, not just if you're in a developed economy that has well-developed banking and payments infrastructure.
Okay, excellent. So third topic I'd like to talk to is, I think, one that will be near and dear to both your hearts, CFTC preemption. How important is it? What is it? And quite frankly, is it necessary for the trading of, let's say, spot crypto on what are likely to be CFTC-registered licensed exchanges with regard to digital assets? So, what's your view of CFTC preemption?
So I'm very proud of the crypto sprint that we launched last year at the CFTC when I was acting chairman. And under that crypto sprint, we did, for the first time ever, have leveraged spot crypto listed on CFTC-registered exchanges. And that's because in the Dodd-Frank Act, in 2010, it actually required that for retail, that if there's leveraged, financed, or margined commodity transactions, spot commodity transactions, it has to be on one of our DCMs. And indeed, since at least 2020, there have been exchanges that have wanted to list these leveraged products on the exchanges, and the CFTC never allowed them to do it. So what we did is the CFTC did not implement this part of the Dodd-Frank Act. How do you list these products? So I was really happy that we were able to do that last year. And yes, it has federal preemption. Because these products are in the Commodity Exchange Act, because they're required by the Commodity Exchange Act to be listed on a DCM, you can only trade it on a DCM. That provides federal preemption.
You know, Norman, this issue of preemption has come up recently in the area of prediction markets. Mm-hmm. And what some of the states are trying to say is, well, that's fine for the CFTC to regulate this, but if it's sports, somehow that remains with the states, right? Mm-hmm. And I liken that to taking a piece of cake and trying to slice it this way as opposed to that way. The division over sports just has no basis in law. The real division is whether it's a marketplace or whether it's a casino. Mm-hmm. And in the case of a casino is a price maker, and every customer that walks through the door is a price taker. They can either take the price, leave the price, or walk out the door, but they don't get to make a price. In a marketplace, all the participants are price makers or price takers. The platform just puts up the proposition and allows the markets to set or leave the price. That's a marketplace, and that's subject to CFTC preemption. So in a casino environment, it's all for the states. In a marketplace, it's preempted by the CFTC, and the law is quite clear. And there's a very good article that just came out this morning by the former acting general counsel of the CFTC, Rob Schwartz, which I commend to folks for a good read. It very simple terms, just lays this out very clearly. If it's a marketplace, the CFTC has it, and the states don't. And if they don't like it, they can petition Congress, but Congress made that decision in the Commodities Exchange Act. That's the law of the land.
Yeah, and I'd like to actually jump in on this, because this was, of course, something that I spent a lot of time looking at, not just last year, but actually all the way back to 2012 and 2013, when I looked at some of the first event contracts markets that the CFTC was going to potentially allow to list. So on top of what Chris said, it's really important that we look at the actual instrument, like the actual contract, because the CFTC's jurisdiction attaches to commodity interests, to derivatives, to futures, options, and swaps. And so here, the question is it a swap? And if it's a swap, the CFTC has exclusive jurisdiction. It is federally preempted. Only the CFTC can regulate swaps in the United States. The states do not get to regulate swaps. So I think that's one thing that's really important. The other thing that seems to have gotten lost in all of this debate is people are looking at words that aren't in the statute to try to say, does the CFTC have jurisdiction over this? Hedging is not a requirement in the statute for the CFTC's jurisdiction. There is no economic purpose test in the Commodity Exchange Act because Congress took it out in 2000. So people are trying to read things into the act that aren't there. And when you think about the fact that we are in a post-Loper-Bright world where we don't have Chevron deference, it's very important to look at what's on the page. So what is on the page? What is the public interest that the CFTC is charged with overseeing? It is price discovery, price risk mitigation, and price dissemination. And that's exactly what markets do for those contracts and the underlyings of those contracts.
And to build on what she said, it's so interesting how the public policy actually mirrors the law. If you think about it, from a casino point of view, that's a local interest. You want that regulated at the state level. Once you're talking about futures and swaps that are traded in a full marketplace, they're borderless. You need to have national regulation. You can't have this done. Could you imagine having 50 states trying to regulate these global marketplaces? It wouldn't work. So the public policy and the law are aligned in favor of CFTC regulation when it comes to true marketplaces for swaps and futures in prediction markets.
So love your answers, agree 100% with them, and I think for a good comparison contrast, you should see what goes on in Europe, right, in the EU, where they don't want to have a national marketplace. And I think one of the great strengths of the U.S. economy is we have national marketplaces, and why break that up?
You're
right?
absolutely right.
Why destroy, why harm ourselves? So I agree 100%. So,
glad you do. It's good to have the moderator agree with the panelists. That's it.
Well, it's my job.
Okay,
that's what they pay me for. No, anyway, the other thing I'd like to talk about that I think is very interesting is tokenization of derivatives, of kind of where it's going. So I've
Tokenization, here we go. Everyone perk up.
Securities. My background, I worked at the SEC for a few years. I was at the DTC for a few years. I think tokenization is only a great boon on the security side. Don't know a lot about derivatives, don't know a lot about futures. I'd love your views on that.
So before I went into government, I was very honored to have been part of the management team of a company called GFI Group. It was a company we took public in 2006 and was a very successful public company. And as part of my job, I would deal with our shareholders. Well, our firm, like every other public company, we were lucky if we knew who 60 or 70% of our shareholders are. Because most of our shareholders held their shares in street name and through custodians and otherwise. People think about tokenization as being demand-driven, that investors will want their shareholdings in their digital wallet. But think about it from a supply side. Think about it from an issuer point of view.
Right.
The demand for tokenization is going to come from actual securities issuers themselves because they want that direct proximity, that direct communication directly with their investors that they don't enjoy today in our analog world. So there's so many aspects of tokenization, what it's going to do for collateral management. It's going to free up so much collateral, what it's going to do for real world asset tokenization, things like real estate markets and others that are enormous markets that can't be properly collateralized, can't be properly utilized. So tokenization is huge. The point I'd like to leave the audience with, though, is it's not just going to be investor driven. It's going to be issuer driven as well. Municipal securities issuers are going to be able to issue tokens
Okay, I have to pause it real quick. This is why I'm so high on CC. You guys have heard me talk about it, because it's not going to be investor driven. It's going to be issuer driven. It's going to be the BlackRocks, the JP Morgans, the major banks want tokenization. So we need to figure out what is going to benefit from it.
Municipal debt, which, by the way, is how all our stadiums and water treatment facilities and others are built at the municipal level. And yet they're sold to local audiences. Wait till there can be tokenized and sold globally. So it's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I've been looking at tokenization of financial instruments since about 2018. And really, again, it's smart contracts, right? So we were talking about smart money. So these are smart contracts. Tokenization is actually perfect for derivatives because derivatives are open for a long time. They have a life cycle, and there's all of these life cycle events where you are, marking to market, or you are doing, margin calls, you're exchanging information back and forth. And when you have that tokenized, not only can you automate all of those life cycle events through the smart contracts, but the reconciliation is instant because of the blockchain ledger. So derivatives is actually one of the perfect use cases for tokenization. And so that's why it was key as part of the crypto sprint last year that there was an initiative to make technical amendments to the CFTC's rules to ensure that the use of blockchain technology is allowed in the rules and it's technology neutral. And now that's been put into this unified project crypto between the CFTC and the SEC. And I think this harmonization is especially going to help to unleash the benefits of blockchain technology in markets.
Yeah, great. And I will tell you, like I say, I come from more of the securities world, and I did spend 8 years at the DTCC as a managing director. It's about $40 billion a year just to clear and settle securities transactions. I don't know what it would cost on the derivative side. If issuers would put their securities on blockchains, most of that cost would go away, and you could have almost instantaneous settlement, very transparent, and you know the costs. I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. I know it would be difficult, but to me, such advantages.
Norman, I fell down the crypto rabbit hole as a result of the 2008 financial crisis. My firm, GFI Group, was the platform where about 70% of the world's credit default swaps traded. Mm-hmm. And at the time that Lehman Brothers fell, the Federal Reserve, where it used to be, calculated that there was about $400 billion of credit default swaps written by all the other Wall Street banks that would have to pay out if Lehman Brothers fell. Mm-hmm. And I knew intuitively that number was wrong because I knew on our trading platform, whenever one bank would write protection on another bank, they'd turn around and re-hedge it. Mm-hmm. But those re-hedges were not recorded. And so the Fed added up all the notional amount and came up to this $400 billion figure. Well, we now know that if Lehman Brothers fell, it would have not triggered $400 billion. It would triggered less than $8 billion. In 2008, if we knew that a failure of Lehman Brothers would trigger less than $8 billion of payout, we could have let it fail, we could have let it be sold, we could have bailed it out. We would have had policy choices we didn't have, but we wouldn't have had a bank panic. Yeah. We had a bank panic because nobody knew the full amount, and nobody knew it because it wasn't recorded on a blockchain. Yeah. And that was the eureka moment. If in the 2008 crisis, we had financial cartography to be able to map all of the exposures, we would have known precisely what the real risk is in the economy. That's, if you really want to think about it from a public policy point of view, the eureka bit about blockchain is recording financial transactions in a way that are instantly recognizable and quantifiable whenever you've got a crisis.
That's powerful. And I mean, I was at the DTCC when Lehman fell, and let me tell you, it was panic in the city.
People are
right?
panicking right now about private credit.
That's some information.
All the private credit transactions were on a blockchain. We would know whether we've got reason to panic or not. We just don't know because we don't have that, that precision.
Yeah, because I mean,
shadow banking at its finest.
I'll just say, having seen Wall Street technology up front and personal, it's old, it's clinky, it's inefficient.
Well, you were at DTCC. It still uses COBOL, and
I
love DTCC.
I know. I mean, I was there. It surprised me when I found
Wall
that out.
Street's
I'm like, this is
old
the
and
technology that was
clunky?
meant on the moon in 1969, and we put trillions of dollars of trades on it in the 21st century. Yeah, I mean,
But I tip my hat to DTCC, what they're now doing with
they're recognizing that,
What's the DTCC doing now? Tell us.
That's one of the reasons I went to Silicon Valley. I'm like, why are we living with this old tech? Okay, so finally, and real quick, I want to talk about the CFTC, the recent CFTC SEC memorandum. We've got 58 seconds. Let's go.
Okay, so I think this is fantastic because you're basically taking a shared services model and you're applying it to basically the common functions that the agencies do. So by doing joint efforts around applications, product approvals, examinations, and enforcement actions, you're able to better leverage the resources of both agencies, make sure that there's a consistent policy approach between both agencies, don't have any turf wars, and I just think it makes so much sense. It's a really fantastic initiative by Chairman Seelig and Chairman Atkins.
Do you want to say anything? You've got 25 seconds.
A CFTC SEC cooperation is what the taxpayers expect. And unfortunately, it's been more the exception to the rule that the two agencies haven't worked together. I tip my hat to Acting Chair Pham, who really got the agency back to a cooperative spirit from where it had been when those two agencies, unfortunately during the last 4 years, did not cooperate that well. They're cooperating very much. She got it going. Now Chairman Seelig and Chairman Atkins have really made that a reality in this MOU, and let's hope it lasts longer than they do.
Yeah, well, okay, so unfortunately we've come to an end. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I want to thank the panelists. I had a few more questions, not going to get to it, but thank you all very much.
That's quite the nugget there. The 2008 financial collapse would not have happened if they actually just had the knowledge of what their holdings were. Private credit's so freaking shady, man. So the entire...
Up next, we have a keynote on crypto regulation from Alex Kanatikin. He is the CEO and founder of Unicoin. Please welcome him to the stage.
Good morning. With 50 legislators registered to participate in this event, not surprisingly, crypto regulation is the central focus of the summit. And I'd like to contribute to this discussion from a perspective of a founder and CEO of a crypto company with thousands of shareholders. I've been an entrepreneur for over 40 years. I started at 18 in Russia, my native country, and by 25, I've created the largest bank in the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, then I was kidnapped by KGB, which wanted to take over my bank. I was able to escape, and I chose not to return to Russia. The kidnapping was in Hungary. I chose to come to the United States and start anew. After 30 years of providing IT services to US corporations, I created Unicoin in 2022 in partnership with Silvina Maschini, an extraordinary entrepreneur who is going to be presenting her keynote tomorrow. Rosie Reyes presented Unicoin in various events in different countries as one of our directors. She likes to joke that she's created more money than any other person on the planet. And she's right. She's made more money than Elon Musk or Warren Buffett. As the treasurer of the United States, she printed $1.2 trillion. you probably still have banknotes with her signature in your wallets. This $1.2 trillion emission of cash is just one example of the degree to which our country benefits from controlling the most used fiat currency in the world. But cash is quickly becoming a thing of the past. Money has always been evolving, from seashells and other primitive forms of money to gold, paper, plastic, payment apps, and now finally to blockchain, to cryptocurrencies. The United States can control, can lead that future of money, just as it leads tech through Silicon Valley, finance through Wall Street, entertainment through Hollywood. Unfortunately, the previous administration decided to try to destroy the US crypto industry. The previous SEC chairman started his notorious war on crypto, which was so dirty that a federal judge fined the SEC $2 million for gross abuse of power, and 18 states sued the SEC for constitutional violations. And at this point, I may be already losing your attention because it all sounds like old news. The war on crypto is over. Well, not so fast. Unfortunately, it still continues. Unfortunately, our company is still the target of the very same people which Gary Gensler tasked with the objective of destroying Unicoin to preclude our public listing on the New York Stock Exchange. Those people fabricated grotesquely absurd charges against Unicoin in the very final days of Gary Gensler's chairmanship. And they are still being persecuted by the SEC despite having been likely the most compliant crypto company in the country. In fact, we were the only cryptocurrency company which chose to be fully audited and publicly reporting. Our compliance standards were so high that we passed through 2 exhaustive year-long investigations of the SEC with no violations found. Investors loved our transparency. They gave us $100 million in capital and signed $3 billion worth of real estate for Unicoin swaps agreement. And at that point of time, in early 2024, we filed S1 application with the SEC to go public on the New York Stock Exchange and announced our upcoming listing on crypto exchanges. We started a high visibility advertising campaign, which irritated Chairman Gensler, who saw our success apparently as a humiliating defeat in his war on crypto. Now, I praise Chairman Atkins for his efforts to undo the colossal damage his predecessors has inflicted on the US crypto industry. In November of last year, November 12th to be more precise, Chairman Atkins totally, completely reversed position of Gary Gensler on cryptocurrencies. Whereas Gensler ruled that all cryptocurrencies, with sole exception of Bitcoin, were securities and therefore prohibited from being traded in the United States, Chairman Atkins announced last November that his SEC is not going to be considering cryptocurrencies as securities with very narrowly defined exception. His taxonomy of crypto is a pivotal moment for the crypto industry and for our company. It removed the regulatory roadblock for us to proceed with public exchange listings. Unfortunately, this is just a statement, a position of the SEC chairman, and it may be reversed by a stroke of a pen of the next chairman, who might well again be Gary Gensler. And therefore, we still live in a situation of regulatory uncertainty, of systematic debanking, and continued war on crypto. And as the world is moving to digital money, to blockchain, the question is, which country is going to lead that evolution? Many countries compete for attracting crypto businesses, but here in the United States, Silvina and I are still very much restricted from providing a superior, more scalable, more efficient, made in the United States alternative to Bitcoin. The president, the SEC chairman, Paul Atkins, the CFTC chairman, Michael Selleck, and many legislators are trying to turn the United States into the crypto capital of the world. But for that to happen, certain things must occur. The Crypto Market Clarity Act needs to be passed. Systematic debanking of crypto companies has to stop. And equally importantly, the dirty war on crypto lawfare initiated by Gary Gensler must be terminated. That's my opinion, and thank you very much for your attention.
The systematic debanking of crypto companies. He's basically coming out and saying that Uniswap and Unicoin is still under pressure from banks and the old Gensler regime trying to hold them down. Again, Uniswap was announced to be partnering with BlackRock for bringing BlackRock's assets on chain. So this is far from over as far as the fight goes. The banks don't want this.
Thank you, Alex. The administration has made it clear it wants to open the door to alternative assets like crypto in retirement accounts, but it's still up to regulators, employers, and fiduciaries to decide what that actually is going to look like. So who ultimately gets to decide what Americans can invest with in their retirement savings? In our next panel, Teddy Fusero is the president of Bitwise. He's going to break this all down with Secretary Lori Chavez de Raymer of the Department of Labor in a conversation. Please welcome them to the stage.
All right. So Bitwise and Department of Labor talking about what we're allowed to invest in, apparently.
We did it.
We made it.
We're here. We're mic'd up and ready to go.
Mic'd up and ready to go, and
Yeah.
you even have your green on for St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, honoring my mom. Should be so proud. My mom's Irish. I only talk about the Mexican side usually, which is my dad, which we'll do Cinco de Mayo and all of that now.
Yes,
Irish.
my Irish mother will be equally disappointed that
Yes.
I have red instead of
You have
red.
green, some green on your socks?
There you go.
There you
We'll
go.
have to-
Good job.
Thank
Well,
you.
hi, everybody. Are you sleeping? What time is it?
So I'm here with the
This is the most
Secretary
awkward
of the
start to a
Department
panel.
of Labor, as Ellie said, Lori Chavez de Raymer. Really excited to have you here. Thank you for being here. Very different tone and tenor of this event than it was over the past couple of years. I think I can safely say that.
I think so too. And I think probably, as was mentioned right on the outset, the tone and tenor overarching theme is really flexibility. And you know, listening to the private sector talk about what that means in their fields with fiduciaries and so forth as we move forward. But the president's been clear on we want Americans to be able to invest freely, and that comes upon flexibility when we're looking at rules and regulations.
Wow. Well, love to hear that approach. This session that we have here today is called Who Decides What Americans Can Invest In? And when you stepped into this role, Secretary, there was guidance from the prior administration that was on the books that a lot of people, a lot of plans and investors read as Washington telling 150 million retirement savers what they could and could not invest in. What is the Labor Department's view on those types of investment decisions under President Trump and under your leadership?
Yeah, what you're speaking to was really putting the thumb on the scale, and that's what we saw under the Biden administration. And one of the first things that the Department of Labor, and certainly under this administration's direction was to rescind that Biden-era rule because of how, whether or not it was a mandate of, yes, you can't do this or you can't do that, it was really the thumb on the scale of the fear for fiduciaries to be able to offer real-world advice to their investors and people who were investing in themselves and their retirements. It led fiduciaries not to want to lean in on a lot of things. And so one of the things that we did at the Department of Labor was to rescind that Biden-era rule, 2022 rule, for the flexibility in itself that fiduciaries with their investors should decide on where they want to invest their money. And we're seeing that across the board when we're talking about whether it's alternative assets, and I know we'll get to that, but how important that is to have clear guidance for fiduciaries along that roadmap that they want to produce for their investors.
Yeah. And how have the fiduciaries responded to that? Has it been positive? Has it been dialogue? Have there been more questions about that? Have they been excited by it?
Well, I think that the excitement comes in when you're giving them the responsibility they're the professionals in the job. They obviously have rules and regulations that they have to respond to, whether it's prudency and so forth. They're here to protect retirees. That's important, of course, for the Department of Labor as well. But it is best incumbent upon them to determine what that is with their, people who want to retire successfully after working a hard career in their lifetime, to have that flexibility to do so and work with the private sector when it comes to the Department of Labor to have those rules and regulations, to have certainty behind it without really determining with a thumb on the scale. And the president, again, through democratizing, any sort of retirement and assets, that's been important for the president to do so. And so we're working very diligently with our fiduciaries and anybody who has any sort of equities in that to have their voices heard as the rulemaking process moves forward.
Yeah, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So the department, one of the early things that the department did was pull back that prior guidance from the prior administration on crypto in retirement plans. The old guidance, as I understand it, was never technically banning anything.
Right. That's what I was mentioning. It wasn't really yes or no, but it did put the fear in the fiduciaries to want to offer any sort of investments in crypto if they weren't sure where that rule.
Are you guys seeing this in your retirement plans?
What we want to do
Are you able to
sure
invest in crypto in your retirement plans at work now?
As I've worked with, whether it's the SEC, FTC, we work across the agencies to determine that and get that feedback. So, while we can't speak to a lot of things that happen in rulemaking, as you know, alternative assets is making its way through the process now. Can't speak to specifics on that, but we'll always keep everyone informed that needs to be informed as these rules go through. I will say I'm a former mayor from Oregon, and what we want to pay attention to is always the outside factors of who's going to weigh into this. While I don't create the laws, we certainly look to Congress to create those laws, but we have to remember who it's applying to, and we have to work with the outside and the private world in order to get the rulemaking correct. And I think that's where the certainty can come in, and that's what I think the Department of Labor has been focused on. Not only this rule, but when we think about deregulation, deregulatory actions, it was incumbent, again, upon each agency for this president to say, how do we deregulate the bureaucracy that comes through a lot of our agencies in order to best fit the private sector and in turn help the American people. And that's what you're seeing from this administration, help the American people. The Department of Labor has had 63 deregulatory actions since I took the helm in March. When we look at the first even Trump administration, there was only 30 deregulatory actions over the whole 4 years. Wow. So when we do that, and then it goes through the rulemaking process, we're looking for everybody to weigh in, and specifically whether it's crypto, alternative assets, we'll work cross-agency, and we have a good relationship to do so, and we're getting that positive feedback that we're headed in the right direction when it inspires more investments by the American people.
Yeah, so it sounds like you touched on what I was going to ask about next here, is really what is the inspiration from the Trump administration, from President Trump, for making these types of changes? What is the thing underlying it that is either inspiring or philosophically the alignment here that the administration is looking for?
Right. Well, again, democratizing alternative assets has been one executive order, but we're seeing it kind of across the board. It really wasn't on this paper to talk about, let's just say, the Trump accounts as well.
Wow.
Again, honoring what we look to future American workforce. To think that the president is going to align himself with the American people and keep the promise that, you're going to invest in a newborn to $1,000 in a Trump account, that then they can invest over time and families can up to $5,000 a year, that whether they reach 18 and have hundreds of thousands of dollars or all the way to retirement age and looking at a possibility of over $1 million in retirement. That's huge for the American economy. It's huge for the future workforce. It's talking about the compounding effect of interest. It's a change in how we want to have prosperity in America. And that's the overarching theme that you're seeing again across many agencies, but specifically to the Department of Labor. It's the flexibility, retirement and protecting retirement, and working with the people who have the same responsibility to investing for their retirees, weigh into the rulemaking process. And that's what we look forward to, at least I do as the secretary, is to get the feedback from the private sector and not let Washington bureaucracy weigh us down once again. And the president has been clear that that's not what he wants from his secretaries either.
Wow, yeah, as someone who operates a small business or a growing business in the space, I can say that that's been a significant change for us in trying to navigate how we do things as well. So really,
small
really
business,
resonates.
Bitwise is a small
another
business.
thing I wanted to ask about is, so the SEC chairman, Atkins, and the CFTC chair, Selig, are both here at the summit this week. So the things that you're talking about obviously do not reside within just one agency, and you already touched on it. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about how the DOL is working cross-functionally with other federal agencies, with the SEC, with the CFTC, the White House, on expanding retirement investment options.
So I did touch on it because I've had conversations with the other agencies, because it's important that when it is cross-agency, we have to work with each other. Again, almost now we say we don't like mandates, but really a mandate from the president with the secretaries and with all other agencies is to make sure not only are we talking to the American people, not only are we talking to any sort of private sector companies or even public sector that we're doing business with, how do we work through this process so we have good policy across the board despite whoever is in the administration? It makes sense to only have good policy so it doesn't end up in another injunction or in court, and we're battling that, which often happens in Washington, D.C. We want to have good policy so that there is that certainty. When we're talking about investments, the certainty to be 6 months or 9 months or a year makes no sense. People don't want to put in the hard work for any sort of retirement. But so it was important to talk to those agencies and within the Secretary's office, the deputy secretaries, with anybody who has any say-so to get it through the rulemaking process. We want to make sure that we're knocking that down ahead of time, and we can't do that unless we're all talking. We don't need it to get held up in another agency, and I think that that's important to do together on the front end, so that on the back end it makes good sense. And that's, again, coming really directly from the White House.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was challenging in the crypto and digital asset ecosystem in prior administrations was almost having an experience where oftentimes the different federal agencies were almost at odds with each other about who has jurisdiction over what, or how do they approach it. It was very confusing as a practitioner.
It makes it easy to want to have control of your own agency and think that you know better. Well, we do better when we know better, but there are plenty of things that the Department of Labor is not an expert in that possibly the SEC is an expert in, and same with the FTC and so forth, all agencies. So I look to my counterparts to give me the information and feedback as we make our way through that process. So when we, audition for you all or audition for whoever you're investing with and in your companies, it matters to know that you're on the right track. And you can't do that if we're battling internally. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I'm a small business owner as well, understanding that you have the best outcomes if you're working together to knock down maybe some of the red tape or bureaucracies that are going to come to play. And they certainly will. But but it's easier if you're all on the same page or the same sheet of music, in my opinion.
100% agreed, Secretary. Shifting gears a little bit, could you talk a little bit about how digital assets themselves are reshaping jobs and workforce demands?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was inspired to do was have a 50-state tour when I first took office. We finished our 50 states in the first year. And it was important to talk to the American people, what was happening and what were the market demands that we're seeing across the board. And then be able to tell that story to the president about where we were going to focus a lot of our grant dollars. I partner with the Department of Education, certainly with the Small Business Administration, but we've deployed hundreds of $millions in grants. We want to make sure that the talent pool is strong. We're seeing that in AI, we're seeing that with what are the jobs of tomorrow, and how are we going to be literate and efficient, whether it applies to AI or investments or whatever the trades. We're seeing a much different picture on the ground. So consumer confidence is up, businesses are investing. They're certainly backing up the president's investments that either countries or companies are coming into the United States and saying, we want to invest $18 trillion. How do I double down or back his bet up by having the workforce that it's going to take in order to fulfill the promises that these companies are making by investing in the United States of America. We are the greatest country in the world, but we have to have the talent pipeline to do so. So listening to those market demands and then making sure that whether we're working with vocational schools or technical schools or universities, that not everybody's going to get a four-year degree, but we have to have the skilled workforce to do so. And that's only going to come in working with our respective states to get those grant dollars out so that we answer. I don't create the market demands, but we certainly want to answer the call that we have the skilled pipeline ready to go from day one. And we're seeing that in manufacturing, construction, and healthcare, but we're also going to see that in, we see a cybersecurity, national security. We're seeing a lot of those investments, but it changes at a trajectory that we've never seen before, and we have to be spot on. We can't wait to train our future workforce 3 to 5 to 7 years from now. We need it yesterday, and we need hundreds of thousands of new jobs in that space. So that's been the focus, not only from my tour, but certainly wrapping up and listening to the business and the private sector tell us exactly what they need, and then making sure that we can back up into those degrees to answer the call.
Yeah, I mean, so much is changing. Dramatically. Right? And we think about the workforce of the future. You mentioned a lot of the categories: AI, careers in blockchain, fintech, decentralized infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about what the DOL does with these grants and these other programs to prepare Americans for that emerging future that's happening so quickly?
Again, through collaboration with some of the other agencies, again, the Department of Education is one of them. I don't think it's a secret that the president has wanted to take education and move it back to the states. Let the states decide where they're going to spend their dollars, because they're working with their respective private sector partners about what those demands are in each specific state. So whether we see that in innovation, education, the Department of Labor's job in that and partnership was they are our future workforce wherever they stand. So we're investing not only in K through 12 education, we're expanding through our post-secondary education, and then through the trades. We're seeing a lot of dollars go out to our community colleges, our vocational schools, because when a private sector company is in a local community and they need that talent pipeline right there accessible, we have found that we're seeing a lot of that come through our vocational schools and technical schools. So we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've deployed, Make America Skilled Again grants, over $86 million. Our AI focus has been huge, where $145 million is available. Every single week we're releasing hundreds of millions of dollars to answer the skilled workforce. We're also seeing it in the private sector, where they have not done this really before. They invest the dollars in infrastructure, they invest the dollars in building, but they're spending a lot of their private sector dollars in their own workforce as well. I saw an example of that up in Syracuse with Micron. They're not only building massive amounts of manufacturing centers in Idaho and in Syracuse, but with their $200 billion of investments, $250 million of that will go to the workforce that they need, and we've not really seen that a lot with private sector. They left it up to the federal government or state governments to supply those dollars, but we want to see the private sector do that as well. So we're inspiring them by having matching dollars. We want to be the last mile for them to understand and then collect that data. So we created an AI hub at the Department of Labor to collect the data from private sector to say, how is AI really affecting the market? How is it affecting the labor force? We cannot do that without getting the feedback from the private sector. We certainly don't want to displace the American worker. What we want to do is have an enhancement of a tool, the innovation that comes with it, and how do we create more job and opportunities with AI. So we're seeing those changes, and we want to make sure that we're talking to the American people and being as transparent as possible. And that really comes again from the president saying, talk to the American people, be transparent, show that we are a two-way street and not giving mandates from Washington, D.C.
It's so important with the changes that we're seeing in the labor market and with the rapid evolution of technology. Can you talk a little bit more about the DOL's role, particularly in apprenticeships, credentialing, and skills-based training in these emerging technology sectors?
Absolutely. So skills-based training, the Make America Skilled Again grants. One of the other executive orders that the president had was 1 million active apprentices across the country. Wow. When we say apprenticeships, most people think about the trades, again, whether it's welders, machinists, HVAC. You see a lot of that in the union trades. We're now seeing that shift in the private sector for apprenticeship programs. So again, since President Trump and myself took office, we have registered I think it's just a little over 350,000 new apprentices across the nation, over 2,900 new apprenticeship programs, and now we're starting to see that in these sectors that we've been talking about, whether it's technology, blockchain, even firefighting. That might seem simple, but everybody who needs a pipeline for their workforce, we're wanting to make them have a registered apprenticeship program so that there's a guaranteed workforce ready for you to go in the respective communities that you are looking for. So that's just a change, and we're taking that information back to talk to the American people and say, here's the metrics. If we don't have an outcome-based metrics for the dollars that we're spending, we can't be accountable to the American people and their tax dollars, just as you all do for your companies and or investors. So with crypto, with the alternative assets, to bring it back to this specific industry, we want to make sure that you have the workforce and innovation coming directly from you about what you need, and then let us help you get that workforce in place. The young people are excited about this. This is something I'm sure you all see. Young people are very excited. This is very natural to them to be in this space. And the more we educate and the more we talk about it and the more excitement that we have and we get out of our own way from the federal level, the more successful you'll be, and the more successful you'll be for your retirees that people are investing for their future retirement. We want to have lifetime income, but we want that to come from investments that they've made.
Wow, so important. Thank you for all the hard work on it. One more question to bring it back home as we wrap here to digital assets. When can we expect to hear more from the Trump administration on retirement and digital assets specifically?
Well, I think you're specifically referring to alternative assets and what the president has given us direction at the Department of Labor to do. And again, I have my standard answer is while we're in rulemaking, I absolutely will not be able to give you any feedback on that because that would be unlawful for me to do. But when it does come out and as we move forward, we will be transparent and let you all know exactly where we're headed. And I would imagine you'll start to see that because it's been important for the president to have that flexibility and let's just get it done. And so we're working with our partners to do so. And as we can release things, we will.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Secretary of the Department of Labor, Lori Chavez-DeRemer.
Thank you.
Let's have a hand.
Appreciate it.
All right, so biggest takeaways from that section, jobs of the future, AI, blockchain, fintech, and the trades. And of course, our robust whatchamacallit? Apprenticeships that they have
going. Our next panel, we have a special announcement. The Digital Chamber has been working closely with leaders at the state level to advance thoughtful digital asset policy across the country, and today we're recognizing some of those efforts. Please welcome to the stage Anastasia Delaccio, Executive Director of State and Regional Affairs at the Digital Chamber, for the announcement of the state microgrant winners.
Good afternoon, everyone. You all enjoying the program? It's great to be here with so many leaders who are shaping the future of blockchain, digital assets, and financial innovation. At the Digital Chamber, much of the public conversation around policy understandably focuses on Washington. But the truth is, many of the most important policy decisions affecting this industry are happening in state capitals across the country. State legislatures are writing the rules that will determine whether innovation flourishes or whether entrepreneurs, builders, and investments move elsewhere. And in many cases, people educating lawmakers and shaping those conversations are not large companies or national organizations. They're local advocates, educators, community leaders, and entrepreneurs who care deeply about their states becoming hubs for innovation. That is exactly why TDC's state network was created. The state network is about empowering grassroots leaders that are advocating for smart digital asset policy at the state level. We have found the best way to support these local builders, many of whom do this work as volunteers, is to offer funds that enable them to bring their policy engagement efforts to life. These leading organizations are on the front line of digital asset policy action in their states, and the contributions they make towards developing sensible policy solutions at the state level are critical to the future of this industry across the nation. Each recipient of our microgrants was selected through a competitive evaluation process based on criteria, their goals, and alignment with the Digital Chamber's digital assets policy priorities. Each organization will receive $2,000 to continue expanding their work on the ground. Today, I am proud to recognize the inaugural recipients of the TDC State Network Microgrant Program. Not all of them could join us today, but we'd like to recognize all of them just the same. First, in Illinois, we are recognizing the Convergence Tech Policy Institute, also known as CTPI. CTPI is a global think tank working at the intersection of AI, blockchain, and quantum computing. Their mission is to help governments anticipate how these technologies converge and build safeguards before trillions of dollars of digital infrastructure are at risk. Next, in Maryland, we are recognizing the Maryland Blockchain Association. The Maryland Blockchain Association is a nonprofit coalition focused on uniting industry, government, and academia to advance responsible digital asset policy and workforce development. Their work supports education around several legislative initiatives in Maryland, including blockchain applications in real estate, staking policy, and the development of the state's digital asset and blockchain technology task force.
All right, guys, I'm going to make an executive
we're proud to
decision here.
recognize
This is boring as hell. I was expecting more information on blockchain and less information about the crap we already know about. So, I mean, there was a couple of good nuggets in there, and I can continue going with it later on, but I'm going to go ahead and get off here now. I can maybe come back and do a part 2. Let me know in the comments or let me know in the chat if you guys want to see a part 2 and we can come back to this. But I'm going to go ahead and get ready for my normal noon stream here in the next 30 minutes. I already have everything prepped and ready to go, which I think will be much more entertaining than what we're watching right now, if I'm just being completely honest with you. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. I'll try and pull up Cliff Notes later, pull up any, maybe major nuggets that get dropped in this. But I'm going to go ahead and end the stream for now, but I'm going to be back in 30 minutes. Look out for the notification. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit notifications. We'll do the real normal stream for today here in 30 minutes, okay? I'll catch you guys in a bit.